cut off 6 inches of my hair during my quarantine, so that's how we're doing. Hey guys, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up and talking about all the books that I read in March of 2020, and I managed to read a total of 17, and 3 of those were DNFs, so technically I read 14 books. So yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you guys about all the books I read, so let's get straight into it. I hope you guys are staying safe during COVID, during this extremely scary time where everything is kind of like up in the air and scary. I personally have lost my job due to COVID, which is really frustrating, but that's just kind of how it is, and I just hope that you guys have been able to keep your jobs, have been able to stay home, you know, maybe even work from home. Like, that would be really great, and I just hope you guys are staying safe because, like I said, this is really scary, but yeah, I just hope you guys are staying safe. So let's get straight into the video. So the first book I read in March was There's Something About Sweetie by Sandhya Menon, and this is the companion novel to When Dimple Met Rishi, which is a YA contemporary romance, and this one is as well. It follows Ashish, who is Rishi's younger brother from the first book, and his romance with Sweetie. And I absolutely loved this book. I really just have been loving listening to Sandhya Menon's books on audio because they're so light and fun, and there's a really good blend of like culture and romance, and I just loved Sweetie especially in this book because she deals with a lot of like fat phobia, especially from her own mother, and so it's just kind of like appalling to read that kind of thing, but she's just so strong-willed and so determined to not let anybody flush her self-love down the toilet. So I don't know, I just really absolutely love this, and I feel like these are really great to read during this really scary time. And I actually have filmed a whole video of 10 feel-good book recommendations, which I will link down below in my bio description thing if you're interested. So yeah, I absolutely love this one. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read in March is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. This is a YA fantasy that I pre-ordered before its release, and I believe it came out on February 25th, so I'm glad I actually got to this one because sometimes when I pre-order books, I end up not getting to them for a while even though I pre-ordered them. So I'm happy I got to this one, and so early in March too. So this one follows a girl named Alessandra who is often overlooked because she's the second born daughter in her family, and she's also the youngest. So no one's looking to like court her or anything like that. So basically she devises a plan to woo the Shadow King, marry him, kill him, and steal the kingdom for herself. So I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I thought this was really, really fantastic, and this is just so feminist in nature. Alessandra really takes what she wants from the world, and I've seen a couple people be really critical of how Alessandra isn't necessarily a likable character because she kind of just puts herself first, and sometimes I don't really think there's anything wrong with that, and I think a lot of people take issue with characters who aren't perfect and compassionate or like, you know, the picture of kindness, and Alessandra definitely is not the picture of kindness, but I think that really propelled her forward as a character, and I just really thought that was so badass of her, honestly, and that's why I love this book so much. I think that a lot of people have been really critical of this book because they're trying to like pick it apart like any other fantasy book and like really just like thinking about the magic system and like the plot and like all this kind of thing, but really it's not that kind of fantasy book. It's very light fantasy, I'd say. Like, not that it's like urban fantasy, but it's like just so basic fantasy that it's just pure enjoyment to read. I'm not calling this book basic, but I think that the world building here is very minimal, and this is just purely an entertainment story. I was hooked from page 1 and I just could not put this down. So I think this is purely an entertainment read, but it's so much fun, and I really just liked reading about everything that Alessandra was doing. Like, she was telling her other friends to like, you know, be, you know, courageous and do what they want and not let men step on their necks, and like, and she was very respectful of her friends' wishes, even though her friends were like different than she was. Like, one of her friends wanted to save herself for marriage. Alessandra sleeps with basically whoever she wants, whenever she wants. She's not really like ashamed of that or anything, but she was very respectful of her friends who don't harbor the same wishes that she does, so I found that really nice and cool. So overall, I just really love this. I thought it was a fantastic feminist book that was purely entertainment, and I absolutely love this. So if you're looking for something really fun, quick, and easy, then I highly recommend this one. It's fantastic. So the next thing that I read in March is Saga Vol.3 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This is an adult sci-fi graphic novel series that I've been reading, I believe, since February. And this one basically follows two people, Alana and Marco, whose moon and planet are at war. And Marco was Alana's prisoner, but they ended up falling in love, so she basically let him go. She left the draft, and so she's kind of on the run with Marco and their new baby, and they're on the run from like assassins and their respective armies because they kind of just like left. So I've just been really enjoying this series. I think it's a lot of fun, it's very high stakes, there's a lot of action, and I just love Alana and Marco as characters. Like, I just absolutely love this series. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. It's definitely for adults though. It does have a lot of trigger warnings, so just be wary of that going into it. But yeah, absolutely love this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read in March is Queenie by Candace Carty-Williams, and this one is an adult contemporary novel about a woman named Queenie who is living in London, and she's straddling two cultures, Jamaican and American culture, and she's kind of just navigating adulthood, and she's trying so hard to be a better person when she feels like the whole world is kind of just like stepping on her throat, and she feels so unlucky, but a lot of that is actually the result of her own self-sabotage. So I actually got this book in my March Book of the Month box, and I picked this as my add-on, and I was just expecting this to really be a, fluffy contemporary about a woman, a black woman in London living her life, but what I found was so much more than that, and this book is just really this book truly winded me, and I'm having a really hard time like finding my words for this book because this is such a deep and personal and intimate like an account of a woman who is trying to live her life and be a better person, while also sabotaging herself ultimately and making decisions that harm her even more. And as a reader, you just feel so confused because you want to give her a hug, and other times you want to like chastise her for making stupid decisions. So this book is really just so complex, and I just love that about it. This book touches on so many important topics surrounding race, black fetishization. That's a really hard word to say. I don't even know if I said it right. But it also talks about like miscarriage and womanhood and relationships. And it really just takes those things and like dissects them and tears her life apart and puts it back together again. And this book is just so complex, and it carries so many, like I said, important topics. And it was really difficult to read about, but it was also very realistic and intimate. And Queenie isn't necessarily a likable character, like I mentioned before, because she's constantly self-sabotaging herself. But like, I think that if you step outside yourself and you truly like look at Queenie, you probably know someone like her, or maybe that's even yourself. And that's kind of like the whole like shock factor of this book to me, is like how like intimately it was written. Like, I feel like Candace Carty-Williams like really knows like the interworkings of people's brains. And so I don't know, this book was just really fantastic. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Unfortunately, this was really hard for me to read because there are so many triggers like sexual violence, so I will be unhauling this, not because I didn't like it, just because I can't picture myself reading again. I was kind of like hopping between the audiobook and reading it physically, and I think I should have read it physically because hearing certain things like described by someone else like made it even more like harrowing to listen to. So like I said, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought this was really like elegant and poignant, and this discusses so many important topics that like I otherwise would have not have thought about, and it was just so impactful for me. Like, I have not stopped thinking about it, but I don't think I'm going to read it again just because of like all the triggers it had for me personally, that it was really hard for me to get through. But I think that if you're looking for a book that really takes a deep dive into a black woman's life who's straddling two cultures, self-sabotaging herself, and everything like that, then I think this book would be really good. Just keep in mind there is a lot of triggers here, but yeah, I absolutely enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, have not stopped thinking about it since I read it. So the next book I read in March is Moxie by Jennifer Mathieu, and I listened to this one on audio. Partly, I think 3/4 of the way I listened to it on audio, and then I just had so little left that I didn't see a point in listening to it, so I just finished it physically. And I actually like sprayed the edges of this one, and I also like added little like feminist symbols on the side, and I think it looks pretty good. But anyways, this one is a YA contemporary about a girl named Vivian who goes to a very sexist high school where there's a lot of sexist things going on, especially in the administration, not just like the jock football players, but like they'll do random dress code checks that are targeted specifically at girls, and they don't let them do certain things, and they get talked over in class and everything like that. So this one I actually really enjoyed. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I think this was the best YA contemporary feminist novel I've read to date, because I struggled with a couple of other ones before, some of the really popular ones as well, like, Watch Us Rise, which I just did not click with. But I really liked how this one was a very realistic account of feminism and what it means to be a feminist. And it wasn't just like the stereotypical, like, I'm gonna shove my feminism down your throat kind of feminism. And it really just shed feminism in a really good light. I'm saying that because I've read a couple of books where they put feminism into a really bad light and they're perpetuating stereotypes about feminism, but I feel like this did it in a very politically correct way, I guess you could say. And I just really liked how Vivian was discovering feminism, and she wasn't feminist from the get-go. She slowly realized the need for it, and she got sick of seeing the girls around her being trodden on by men. And that's how her feminism came to be, because she was pissed off. And all the things that were happening in this book to the girls, I was getting pissed off. And if you didn't get pissed off, then are you okay? I was so pissed off when I was reading this. I was like, I hate those boys. What they're doing is so fucked up. And so if you're looking for something that will, make you want to take down the patriarchy, then I highly recommend this one. I really liked how also Vivian's boyfriend, he was kind of doing some misogynistic things, and instead of her kicking him in the balls and swearing off men for the rest of her life, she actually took the time to educate him on his misogyny and how that is harmful to women. So I really liked that aspect of this book. So if you're looking for a great YA contemporary with feminism, then I highly recommend this one. It's fantastic. I have really sensitive skin, so even if I scratch myself lightly to scratch an itch, it'll look like that. So just ignore that. I'm fine. So the next book I read in March is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson, and this one was on my 5-star predictions list, which I'll link down below if you're interested in watching that video. But basically this one follows 2 twins, Jude and Noah, who have a little bit of a falling out, and this book is just them kind of coming back together. And this book is really hard to explain because there's so much that happens. It follows 2 dual timelines. It follows Noah's perspective from the past and Jude's perspective from the present. So you kind of feel like you're watching them grow up, and you're seeing all these relationships and how they developed over time. And so I thought that was a really unique writing device, and I just absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I didn't explain this really well. It's really hard to explain. But basically, it's just Jude and Noah reuniting, and this has a lot to do with family. This is a very family-heavy book. It explores so many different family relationships, not just between Jude and Noah, but between their parents and their friends and everything like that. And this was just so fantastic. I honestly had a really hard time getting into the writing at first because it's nothing I have ever read in my life. It's very descriptive, and the author uses a lot of imagery to show, to get her points across, and it was just kind of weird getting used to it at first, but honestly, it was so good. By the time I got used to it, I was just head over heels for this book. And not only is the writing gorgeous, but the plots and relationships are just so just so well thought out. Like, you can tell how much care went into this book, and I just loved it so much. I feel like the siblinghood in this book is also depicted really well. I have 8 siblings, so I know all about that. But just like the fights that they had and like the things that they would do to each other is absolutely horrible, but that's like normal for siblings. Like, they will destroy what you love if you cross them. Like, it's a real thing. So like, they're kind of like morally gray in that aspect, but they always end up making up in the end. And this also like explores sexuality because Noah's gay, and I thought that was like a really just like deep dive into sexuality, and I really enjoyed Jandy Nelson exploring that within a young boy. So this book was just fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about it. The writing was beautiful, the plot was so complex. I loved all the characters, and I also really loved the author's use of art, because both Jude and Noah are artists, and at one point they're actually both like trying to get into an art school, and I just really loved the realistic way that she showed art. And I don't know, it's really hard to explain. If you have done art yourself, or like you are an artist, you understand, like, she showed like the highs of art when you're like, you can't stop creating, like your hands won't stop moving, you won't listen to anyone around you, and you're just like doing art. And then she also showed like the lowest lows, and like not wanting to do any art at all, like not wanting to look at it, even destroying it. And that is just so like intimate, and I just love this book so much for that. But yeah, I'm kind of getting like passionate talking about this book, but I just absolutely loved it. Like I said, plot was just amazing, the writing was beautiful, I really loved the intimate inclusion of art in this book and what it means to be an artist, and family, and this book was just so fantastic. So if you have not read this, please read it. It's amazing. I also really, really liked the audiobook for this, so yeah, this one was just amazing. So the next book I read in March, I actually don't have a physical copy of. I have it on ebook, and that is The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare. So The Duchess Deal was my very first historical romance, and I've never read one before. So this was just so much fun. So this basically follows a girl named Emma who is basically out on the street after she had kind of like a falling out in her family, and this boy kind of like broke her heart, and so now she's kind of just like on her own in the streets. So she kind of like concocts a plan to show up at the Duke of Ashbury's house and be like, hey, if you need any work, like, I can give you some work. And so basically, he is the Duke of Ashbury. I'm just going to call him Ash for the sake of being short. But basically, Ash, he gets back from the war, and he has, like, half of his face, like, covered in, like, mangled burns because a rocket launcher, I think, like, exploded on his face. And so his wife that he was going to marry, or his fiancée, basically broke it off because she thought he was like hideous or whatever. So basically, Ash is like, I need a wife because I'm past my prime and I just need someone to marry. So basically, when Emma shows up on the doorstep, he's like, boom, marriage of convenience. So basically, Emma and Ash work out an arrangement and they get married for convenience. So I've actually never heard of a marriage of convenience story ever, and so it was like really kind of strange to read about. But ultimately, I ended up really, really enjoying this. Like, at first, I was reading it and I was like, yeah, I don't like this. But the more that I read it, like, it just really grew on me. And I really like Tessa Dare's writing because it's just absolutely hilarious. And her banter had me, like, rollicking on the floor. Like, it was so funny. And I just really liked the character development that she had. Like, it wasn't just two people banging. Like, it was, like, actually people who have, you know, personalities and feelings and trauma and everything like that. So I just really, really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it was really good in terms of like historical fiction. Like I said, I haven't read any of it before this book, so I can't really say if it's like, you know, cream of the crop or anything. It has a really good Goodreads rating. I think it's like 4.5. So yeah, I really absolutely love this book. So if you're looking for something really fun and just a good time, then I highly recommend The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare. In March is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, and if you guys remember, this was in my March TBR video, and I actually got around to it. I'm surprised because this book is fucking huge. But anyways, this is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series and in the very popular Shadowhunters universe by Cassandra Clare. I think there's like coming on 20 books in this series, maybe a little less than that, maybe more. I honestly have no idea. But I have never read it before, and I really just wanted to like get on that train, so I decided to read the first one, City of Bones, which follows a girl named Clary Frey, and she's, I believe, 15, and she goes to a nightclub for like teen night, and she sees something she's not supposed to, and she investigates, and basically she comes upon Jace and a bunch of other characters who basically are shadow hunters, and they hunt demons or shadows or whatever you want to call them. And she basically finds herself like entangled in their little like society or like shadow hunters band or whatever you want to call it. Supreme YA trash. Like it's YA trash, but it was just fun. I had so much fun reading this book. I can't really explain why. Like, it was extremely tropey, extremely cheesy. There's, you know, vampires, werewolves, whatever, but I still had a really good time reading it. Like, I don't know why. Like, this is, like, good trash. I can't describe it any other way. Greg? What are you doing? Careful, books. So, I can't really describe to you why I liked this book, because like I said, it's like supreme YA trash, but I think the fact that it is so basic and full of so much adventure at the same time, it felt nostalgic to read because I've read so many books like it. I'd say that this is better than Twilight, honestly, like by a mile, maybe more. Like I said, can't describe to you why I liked this book. It kind of just like grew on me like a parasitic leech, and now I'm hooked. So that happened. But anyways, yeah, I really enjoyed this more than I thought I would. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I think this is just like a really fun, entertaining read. Like The Shadows Between Us, like I was mentioning before in this video, I think this is like purely entertainment. Like, it's not the kind of fantasy to be like picked apart and analyzed for like the world building quality. Like, it's just pure fucking entertainment. So yeah, I don't know if I would recommend this. I'd recommend it, I guess. It's fun, it's entertaining, whatever. I liked it. So the next book I read in March, I don't have a physical copy of, but I did order one, so I'm just waiting on it to come. But it is Girls on the Verge by Sharon Biggs Waller. So this book is a YA contemporary about a girl who is crossing the state lines of Texas to get an abortion, and she is with her friends. So this is kind of like a road trip kind of book, but this is a very heavy book, obviously, because it is about a teenage girl getting an abortion. She's not telling her parents about it because it was from like a one-time thing. She never saw the guy again, and so she's kind of just like on her own. She also lives in Texas, which is the number one state in the United States that has the highest restrictive bans on abortion. So this book was like very feminist and very important, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because this was just so poignant and so important, and I feel like every girl should read this book because not only was it talking about the main character's stance on abortion, but she also had a friend who was religious, so they had a lot of discussions about abortion and religion, and so like it just covered a lot of bases, and it also included statistics, and it just showed like the very realistic experience of a girl who is trying to get an abortion in a state that restricts it. I also really enjoyed this book because it wasn't overly characterized, because that way you can put yourself into the main character's shoes, and like you don't really get like a whole exploration of her relationship with her family, or like you don't learn a ton about her. And I think that is so that you can place yourself in her shoes and see what she's going through and like feel it. And I feel like that was a really smart thing to do, and it just made me connect with her so much more. So like I said, this is a very difficult read because obviously it's about abortion and abortion rights. And Feminism is very important to me, and this book perfectly illuminates why feminism is necessary even in modern America. So I highly recommend this book. It's very, very important, and I think everybody should read it. And it was just overall poignant, amazing, like one of the best feminist YA books I've ever read. And I already want to read it again just because of how like important and impactful it is. So like I said, 5 out of 5 stars, highly recommend Girls on the Verge by Sharon Biggs Waller. If you're wondering why I read so many feminist books in March, it is because March was Women's History Month, and that way, you know, you also won't be surprised by my next read, which is Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. So this one is a collection of essays by Roxane Gay, basically discussing her stance on feminism and how her feminism came to fruition and how we can be better feminists, and how being a bad feminist, like not a perfect feminist, is better than not being a feminist at all. So I ended up loving this. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars because I just loved it. I didn't give it a full 5 because I didn't exactly agree with everything that Roxane Gay said, which is completely understandable because feminism is subjective and, you know, everybody has their own opinions. But I just absolutely love this. Like, I have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it. Like, it was just so impactful for me, and it's definitely up there with like my favorite books just because like it was so impactful, and it made me think a lot about things that I've never thought about before. And I just feel like I learned so much from this, and there's just like so much in this book. Roxane Gay just touches on so many topics like race, class, privilege, sexuality, like eating disorders. Like, she touches on everything that can contribute to her being a feminist, and it was just so fucking amazing. Like, I wanted to read this as soon as I finished it. Like, I wanted to read it again just because there was so much information in here, and I was just like a sponge, and I just wanted to listen to her talk all day. Her writing is just so like no bullshit, like no holds barred. Like, she just says what she wants to say, and she doesn't hold anything back. She doesn't sugarcoat anything, and she's just very like upfront about how she feels about certain things. And like, I kind of want to, you know, be that way too. So I was kind of like striving to be like how Roxane Gay was. Like, her voice as a writer is just so powerful. Like, you can feel it leaking out through the page, and it's just so fantastic. So overall, like I said, I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was really close to being a 5. I just love this. It's definitely one of my new favorites, and I just feel like this put into words a lot of the things that I want to say as a feminist, and it also filled in the gaps in my own feminism. So overall, I think this is a very like necessary read if you're a feminist or you're thinking about feminism or you want to learn more about it, because this book was just so enlightening and powerful, impactful. Highly recommend it. So the next book I read in March is Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand, and this one was a buddy read with my friend Brie. I don't actually know if she got around to finishing it. I'll have to ask her. So anyways, I don't know if she finished it, but I'm really happy that I got to read it anyway. We were both looking for something to read after we both read Wilder Girls by Rory Power, and this came up as like similar online, so that's why we decided to read it. But anyways, this one follows 3 different girls, Marion, Val, and Zoe, and they all live on Sawkill Rock, which is an island, and there's been a string of disappearances amongst the teenage girls there, and they're all close to one of the girls, and so it's basically just them like slowly unraveling the mystery of why girls have been going missing on Sawkill, and there's like paranormal elements involved, which I really enjoyed. So overall, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I thought this was a really, really entertaining read, and it was, like, the whole time I was reading this, I was like, what is gonna happen? Like, what does this mean? And I feel like I had so many questions just running through my brain while I was reading this book, so it definitely, like, keeps you intrigued. It definitely keeps you on your toes. But overall, like, towards the end, like, it just kind of got, like, chaotic, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I was so confused. Like, I had no idea what was happening. And then they just started like doing all these like tropes that were just like almost sci-fi-esque, and I was like, isn't this supposed to be like a horror fantasy? Like, what is going on? So it got kind of like messy towards the end, and I also kind of didn't like how the parents got involved in like the mystery, because for some reason I always like when the parents aren't involved in the mystery, and at the end of the book they're like, should I tell my parents about what happened? And then they decide not to because it's like their own secret mystery. I don't know why, I just like that. So I didn't really like how the parents were involved. But like I said, overall, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really entertaining, and I had a really good time reading it, and I thought it was a pretty original concept. But like I said, got messy towards the end. I really liked how it had asexual rep, and I think either like lesbian or bi rep. I don't think it said specifically. I know there was specifically ace rep in this. I don't know if it's like particularly like correct, but I think it was done pretty well in my opinion, even though I'm not ace myself. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed this. So if you're looking for something spooky, really entertaining, highly recommend this one. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read in March is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, and this one is an adult rom-com book that follows our main character Olive, and her twin sister is getting married, and the groom's brother Ethan is Olive's nemesis. And during the wedding, they don't eat the seafood that everybody else eats, so everybody else gets food poisoning except for them. So Olive's sister can't go on her honeymoon anymore because she's sick. So basically, the honeymoon gets given to Olive and Ethan, who are both arch nemesis. Did I say that right? Arch nemesises? Nemesi? I don't know what the fucking plural is. But anyways, they end up going on the vacation, striking up a romance. This book was fantastic. So I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like this was like the perfect escapist rom-com book that I needed right now, because this is when I read this book when things were starting to get like really scary with COVID, so I feel like this was like a really good comfort read, so I feel like that even increased my enjoyment of it. So like I said, 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's a lot of fun. It's enemies to lovers. What more could you want? It takes place in Maui, so it's like perfect escapism. So highly recommend it. I don't really have a lot to say about it other than that I enjoyed it. So the next book I read in March is Hunger by Roxane Gay, and I just fell in love with Roxane Gay's writing, so I just had to pick up something else by her. So I picked up Hunger on audio, and this one was actually narrated by her, so it was just that much more personal, and it was just a really immersive reading experience. So basically, Hunger chronicles Roxane Gay's her life and her body. So it's kind of like part memoir, part like history of her body, like I said before. And it talks a lot about her eating disorder, about being fat, about how people perceive her, and just like her sexual assault, and like anything that's had to do with her body. And I think this was like a really like unique and very like intimate reading experience. Like I think it takes so much vulnerability to be able to write something like this. Like Roxane Gay does not hold anything back. Like she doesn't sugarcoat anything. Like she tells it how it is, and she's just so unapologetic. And there was a lot of things that she was describing that were just so like, I was physically cringing at some of the stuff she said, like, because it was just so raw and so realistic. Like, there's no other way to describe this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars just because, like, I have not stopped thinking about her work since I've read it. Like, it's definitely some of, like, the most harrowing but so enlightening things that I've ever read in my life. Like, Roxane Gay is definitely one of my new favorite authors just because she's so, like, poignant and so badass, and I just love to read her work. So definitely if you're looking for some like really like hard-hitting nonfiction, definitely check out Roxane Gay. Her stuff is like so feminist, so real, and it's just like some of the best stuff I've ever read. So I highly recommend these. The audiobooks are also narrated really, really well. Bad Feminist was not narrated by her, but this one was narrated by her, like I said. So yeah, this book was just like, it truly punched me in the face and told me I had no rights. So I just absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So now we are moving on to the part of the month where I fell into a major reading slump and I did not want to read jack shit. So the next 3 books I DNF'd. So the first one is The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. This one is an adult thriller that I pulled from my magical online name picker from my list of 800 books on my TBR. And this one wasn't like horrible or anything. I got, I think, like 88 pages in, I think, before I DNF'd it, but I was just really bored. I wasn't really interested. And like I mentioned in my recent unhaul video, I've just been kind of like realizing I don't really like thrillers. Like, I either guess what happens or they just don't hold my attention. This was one of the ones that just didn't really hold my attention. And like I said, I was in a reading slump, and I was also reading my least favorite genre, so obviously I DNF'd it. So yeah, there wasn't anything particularly wrong with this, but I was just not feeling it, and like I said, have not been loving thrillers. So yeah. So the next book that I DNF'd is In the Land of Invisible Women, A Female Doctor's Journey in the Saudi Kingdom by Katha A. Ahmed, and this one is a nonfiction memoir of a doctor who I believe got her degree in England, and she decided to take up a career in Saudi Arabia, and she found that even though they were also Muslim, she didn't really fit in there. And it just kind of like talks about her rejection and racism in the community, even though they are all Muslim. So I didn't have any problems with this book. It's just like I was not in the mood for it. Like, this is like a big book, and it deals with so many like heavy topics. I'm just like, I was not prepared for it. Like, I know that I read a bunch of other hard-hitting things in the month of March, but this was the point when I was like in the worst of my reading slump, and everything was going on with COVID, and I just really did not want to read this. So if I pick this up again in the future, it'll probably be on audio. Like, I just could not bring myself to like read the words on the page. So I will be DNFing this one and getting rid of this copy, but I will probably listen to this on audio at some point. I'm just really not in the mood for this right now. So the last book that I DNF'd is one that I'm really fucking sad about, and that is Platform 7 by Louise Doughty. And this was the Literally Dead Book Club March pick, which is a thriller book club hosted by Kayla over at Books and Lala. She's one of my favorite booktubers, and every month she picks a book for her club members to read, and then she picks a host and does a live show where they discuss the book. Like I said, I'll link that video down below if you're interested, but this one was the March pick, and it's basically about two deaths that occurred on the same train station, I think like 18 months apart, and basically the book is just the mystery coming together. And I thought this was really interesting because it's from the perspective of a ghost, and she doesn't really remember anything about her life or like how she died on the platform. So I thought this was pretty interesting, but I just, like I said, I have found that I have not been loving thrillers, so I'm getting rid of the majority of the thrillers that I own right now, and if I really want to read them, I'll just get them from the library instead of owning them and having them take up space on my shelf. So this one I DNF'd at page 80, like I just had it sitting there for so long just staring at me, and I just like could not pick it up. So yeah, I DNF'd this one at I think it's like 10% maybe? I don't know. But this book is a fucking tome, and I was in a reading slump, don't want to read a big book, don't want to read a thriller. So yeah, unfortunately I will be getting rid of this. I'm really sad that I wasn't hooked by this one, but yeah. So finally, the last book that I read in March is Amulet Vol.4 by Kazuki Buishi. This is a middle grade / YA graphic novel series that I've been reading since December of last year, and I've been absolutely loving it. This one, it follows Emily and Navin, who are brother and sister, and after their mother goes missing, they end up getting whisked into like a whole different like universe, and there's an amulet that beholds a prophecy, and Emily obviously finds the amulet, and they basically just come across a bunch of different like zany characters, and they learn about like the political aspects of this like new universe. And I just thought it's really interesting. Like, I really like this series. It's just so fun. There's so much adventure, so much high stakes, and I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. So if you're looking for some fun fantasy that's easily bingeable, then I think this would be great for you to read during COVID because it's just easy and fun. So yeah, I love this, gave it 5 out of 5 stars, just like the rest of the volumes. It's just a lot of fun. So I think that concludes my March wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Like I said, I hope you guys stay safe during this really scary, trying time, and just let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know what you read in March. Let's just have a chat below. Let's make sure we're all good and okay. Let's check on each other. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day and stay safe. Bye!